I am Laura Trefethen. I am the new executive director for WildAware. And I'd also like to introduce Christy Green, our president of and founder of WildAware.
Welcome,
Her,
everybody. Thank you.
yeah, and she's going to be helping monitor the chat with that over there. So if you see her respond over there, that's who that is. And then we are so excited to welcome Wesley Manney. And I got to pull up your bio here. So Wesley is the founder of the Mountain Pine Beetle Foundation. And Wildware, we came to him because we have a lot of concerns from our community about the pine beetle, obviously, but then also how it really affects our wildlife and our different options we have as homeowners. And so when Wesley and I talked, we realized that this would be a really great fit to help our community understand more of those intricacies and details that homeowners need to know. Um, and Wesley, he has spent his entire career mastering the complexities of arboriculture. And he says his roots are in residential tree care, but his career quickly evolved to lead some of the most significant tree-related disaster relief efforts in the Western Hemisphere. Wesley specializes in the intersection of public safety and forest management. He served as a prime contractor in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and a key partner for PG&E in Lake County, California. His involvement in Shaver Lake, California, serves as a blueprint for the Mountain Pine Beetle Foundation by aggressively removing infected trees and treating healthy ones. His team created the defensible space that ultimately saved the community from total loss in later fire seasons. He's a veteran of recovery efforts in Asheville, North Carolina, following Hurricane Helene. And then Wesley helped over 600 private homeowners through his company, United Arborist. He now brings this world-class experience back to our Colorado Front Range to lead the fight against the current beetle epidemic. So we're so happy to have him. We're going to be taking questions also, so you can easily drop those in the chat for us to read or raise your hand, and then we'll call you out to ask those questions. So from that, I will turn it over to Wesley. And like I said, we really appreciate you being here, Wesley. So thank
Uh,
you.
I appreciate you putting this together. It's a great thing. Um, I know there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of some of these events can cause some hysteria here and there of what to do and how to protect your property, and it leads to a lot of questions. I have my own thoughts. I have my own hypothesis of what's the best thing to do. Some people disagree with that. Some people agree with it. It just depends on who you talk to and really what their motives are in the scenario. We set up the foundation in order to try to help the community as much as we can, whether that be through preventative measures or, tree removal mitigation. Ultimately, that is the best thing to do is to remove any infected trees. To be able to identify them is also very important. It's one of those things where it's hard to notice until the needles start to turn yellow, unless you walk your property a lot. I know there's a lot of larger properties here, and most people don't walk through them all the time. So all of a sudden they wake up and they have 8 dead trees, and they're like, oh, this is bad, and then they don't realize that there's 10 more infected right next to it, and those are going to spread as well. So over time, this is a compounding issue. And we've all driven around, we've all seen the dead canopy, we've all seen 285, I-70 corridor, all of those things of trees just massively dying. And even in Evergreen Central, I find beetle trees all the time. So does anybody here already have any questions that I can answer directly? Is that no? Okay.
Looks like we're good to go.
All right. That's good. So there's a few different options for treatment or preventative. There isn't really any real treatments for once a tree is infected. There are a few. From what I've found, they have very low success rate, and they're also very expensive. And it really depends on the level of infestation of the tree. So, if your tree has 1 to 3 pitch tubes, it's a mature ponderosa, it has a chance of surviving. Just needs to be watched very carefully. Any more than that typically means that the tree is going to die. The beetle bores in, it has its own effect on the tree. The larva create channels through it, affect its vascular system, and then ultimately there's a blue fungus that will kill the tree in the end. And it's a cycle. Usually, it takes a season to do. That's why right now, as you drive around, you'll see some yellowing trees, but also some brown trees next to them. The yellowing trees are last season's flight. The dead trees around them are the season before. So those trees are still left standing and they spread to the remaining trees. The one of the most common methods of preventative measures is going to be spraying. And I don't necessarily agree with the spraying methods. The pesticides that are used, they become airborne at that point in time. They can affect woodpeckers, they can affect butterflies, bees, you name it. It really isn't a targeted precision attack of the beetle itself. Can also harm the things that eat the beetle, like the woodpecker. There's also beetles that eat the beetle. There's predators. And so all in all, it is, in my opinion, to go through and spray all of these trees would be detrimental to our ecosystem at the same time. It is effective. It does work. But at what cost is the question. There depends on which information you read to how much it affects things. There's a lot of information out there that says it doesn't affect anything else. But, like a lot of things that we buy and use, and, from medications to everything else, they have side effects, and, they do treat the problem, but they do have a side effect. The other method that everybody pretty much knows about is verbenone, which is a pheromone. So when the beetle comes to a tree, they release two different types of pheromones. One is to say, hey, we found a good tree. So it attracts other beetles. The other pheromone is, hey, this tree's done, and go to a different tree. So that's the one they've replicated. It is effective. It's not 100% effective, but it is. And it doesn't kill the beetle. It does push the beetle to a someone else's problem, essentially, or another tree's problem, but it does protect your space. The more trees you do, the better for your property. The packets, there's small packets, large packets. The large packets are going to be better. Definitely want to make sure you put them on the north side of the tree. Sunlight will degrade the pheromone pretty rapidly. And then there's the paste. I prefer the paste. I think it's more effective in general, and it also looks better. There's not a bunch of plastic bags stapled to all your trees around your property. So it blends in a little bit more. It's a dark grayish color. You can do a hockey puck size. You can also do um, some lines in the tree as well of, you know, that kind of follow the bark lines. Different methods, but overall, to me, that is a better method. The other method that does work very well is an injection. And the injections, they systemically inject the pesticide into the tree. And so it's not airborne at that point in time. So that's a good thing, but it still is in the tree. It does have a longer protection lifespan on it. But if a woodpecker does decide to go into that tree for some reason, it would affect that woodpecker. But it is also, from my experience, a more expensive treatment. I I would recommend that treatment in a scenario of um, trees close to your house, prized trees, trees that you definitely want to save. That is the method I would recommend to use at that point in time. The ones that you're like, I definitely don't want to lose this tree. If you have 300 trees, to inject them can be very expensive. It's labor intensive, but there are companies that out here that do it for a reasonable price, and they can take care of projects like that. So, it really depends on your budget and depends on, where you want to be. But there is the pesticide is a neurotoxin that's injected. It does have its issues. If there was a spill, if there was anything like that, then, that would be, from an environmental standpoint, definitely detrimental. So, as long as you're hiring a professional service to do it, that's well-rounded and knows what they're doing, then it is a safe application. It is, but from an environmental standpoint, the verbanone is going to be the safest option. It again doesn't kill the beetle, kind of in a way, um, pushes the problem along, like I said, but it does protect your property. Ultimately, the the best method is to be able to identify the trees and get them removed once they're infected. And then the dead ones, obviously, for fire purposes and other things like that. So, um, ultimately, that is the best course of action. So, and I hate to say that because I love trees. They've been my whole life, but removing them is really the only option once they're infected. So, um, they're and Mike, you might be able to speak a little bit more about the injection point. I know that's something that you have some knowledge on. You care to
Yeah,
share that?
sure. I'm glad to. For
Okay.
the other folks, just real quick, I had a
Yeah.
tree service called Lamb Tree here in Evergreen from 1978 to 2015. I retired, and now I'm back in the game because of this huge beetle outbreak. So, anyway, yeah, injection wise, company I'm currently associated with, Mountain Family Tree, we do the injections. We don't spray. Okay, I spent my career spraying these trees. The injections, we're a little concerned in spite of the wet weather these last few days, especially today, that the ground has been extremely dry. We're a little worried about uptake, and we're having people pre-water their trees before we come out. And yeah,
And that's
it's
because the it has to flow through the tree through its vascular system, correct?
right. So the tree will take up the water and the nutrients and the emamectin benzoate through up into the xylem, and it would be systemically contained in the tree, and then when the beetles fly, they would hit, get in there and try to secrete the blue stain and hopefully die off. But I don't want to take over the webinar here. I'll let you chat them.
No, I just know that's something we've spoken in the past, and
Yeah,
you know, I like the fact that you don't spray. And I do, like I
yeah.
said, I agree with the injections. They are better for sure than spraying. I personally eat organic food, and I watch everything that goes into my body, and I try to do the same thing for the environment. And but that is the best way, in my opinion, to. And what's the protection zone on that? Is it 1 to 3 years? Is that right?
Yeah, ArborJet, who's the main people involved in this, they're doing all the trials. They're saying 2 years, possibly more.
Okay.
So it does
Yep.
cost, I would say, roughly 4 to 5 times the cost per tree per year
Yep.
versus spraying. And we're focused on near creeks. Like, I
Yep.
think it's just outrageous to spray near creeks and rivers. So
I
that's
agree.
one goal we have. The other goal is extremely high value trees because it's a few $100s for a good sized tree for 2 years protection. And people who are just not wanting to spray, like Wesley was saying, it's a niche business where we're not doing 50 trees at a time. We're doing mostly two, three, four, five trees.
Yep. And the whole industry of I've consulted for tree companies around the country as well, and plant healthcare is a business, and the the recurring nature of spraying is it's grown dramatically throughout the whole industry. And Bartlett can be pretty much thanked for that one. But the profit margin is much higher within plant healthcare than it is regular tree work. Less personnel. You got one guy, and he's just spraying all day, and they make a lot of money. So ethics become a balance in that scenario. And I've been involved in bigger companies as well, a lot of corporate ones, and the ethics seem to fall through the wayside a little bit in those realms because they're looking at their bottom dollar more than the effects of what they're doing. So, um, you know, most all the companies spray. It's and for me to think of our forest here and the amount of pesticide that it would take to protect them, it's just not a viable option. And it the damage it would do to the pollinators and everything else would be extreme. So you carry that through the food chain as well, it becomes a massive problem. So that really sums up the whole preventative nature of the mountain pine beetle. Getting your property inspected is very important. There are many tree services that will inspect your property. The foundation offers property inspections as well. I believe we're going to send out something at the end of this that'll have a link to that you can kind of sign up and get your property looked at. It doesn't cost anything. It's part of our service at the foundation, and that way, you have some peace of mind, or you know how big of a problem you have. And most people that sign up for one, they have no idea that they have infected trees or even dead trees. Especially when you look into those 20, 30, 40 acre parcels that, no one goes down there, wherever that is, and they just don't know. But once you learn how to identify them, then it's fairly easy too. So I can uh, I can post a picture of if I remember how to do that. Uh, so this tree is already dead. Um, but if you can see this tree in particular is out way out in Jefferson, Colorado, and out there the woodpeckers have done a very good job actually of controlling the infestation. A little bit. It's still there. I don't know if you can you see my circle? Okay. So that's going to be woodpeckers eating the larvae through the bark. These right here, that's where you're going to look for on your trees. Those are the pitch tubes. That's the tree trying to pitch that beetle out and suffocate it. But with the drought and everything else, it's becoming more and more of a problem for the trees that do. So, as you can see, this tree is completely infested. Each pitch tube you see on this tree, there's upwards of 50 beetles potentially coming out of that at the same time. So, if your tree has 100 pitch tubes, you can do the math and figure out how many beetles are going to fly out of that tree at the end of the season, and or after they finish molting and all that. It compounds very quickly. That's why we're seeing these massive swaths, especially on the highway and everything else. But they're everywhere. You just can't see them. They're deep, and but they're also very, you know, right there in our face as well. I see them all over. High wind. I've seen them literally everywhere here. So sometimes they surprise you where they are because they'll just be one infected tree. And I've noticed through walking a lot of properties that, occasionally they'll be in the middle, not typically. Usually they're on the edge if you have like a bordering of something that is, you know, uh, an opening on the edge of your property. Would check there first. The wind will take them there. And they're going to latch onto the first tree they find that is the weakest tree. So if you have any trees that have lightning strikes, anything like that, they're still alive. They are much more susceptible to the beetle because they're already in a weakened state, and the beetles can smell that and sense that. So those are the trees to really look out for. And from my understanding, the beetle didn't really affect younger trees that much. They're a little more vibrant, a little bit more full of pitch and everything else, but right now I'm finding almost saplings with the beetles in them. So which shouldn't really happen. But it uh it just depends on your area. And Typically these beetles would affect lodgepole pines for the most part, but they have definitely come down into the ponderosas with the warmer weather. So, does anybody have any questions now? I saw one pop up in the chat. I didn't see. I saw it briefly. Was it asking
It was about,
how high
yeah, how high
how
you
high
should
to
put the
put the?
packet and the paste, and where do you attach
Yep.
it, or how do you attach it?
So the packet you can use a staple, that's fine, or a small nail. You just don't want to go too deep. Um, you want to put it on the north side of the tree, typically bless you, between 4 to 6 feet is where you want it. And the larger packets are better. They have more pheromone in them, and they're going to degrade a little slower than the smaller packets are. But again, I would recommend the pace if you're going to go the vermin route for sure.
What's the best way for people to find this paste?
The pace.
Yeah.
I can send you a link to a website and that you can order the paste through. It is, from my understanding, they're having some supply issues because of the outbreak. I do know locally, if you only have a few trees, I believe Ace sells the packets. I don't know what size they are, and I I'm not sure. I think they're like $13 a piece, something along those lines. They will serve for the whole season of the beetle. And I saw another question come through that was when to apply them. I would, there's a lot of mixed information about this of viewpoints of the warmer winter mixed with does that increase the beetle's molting stages? Will it fly sooner? Um, the Forestry Service has put out that it should not affect the flight season that much, that it will remain about the same. I would personally, mid-June, late June is when I would start to put them up.
I
Um,
agree.
you agree, Mike?
I agree. I was going to throw something else out that the place that you're going to probably send the link is Forestry Distributing out of Longmont.
Yep.
They are having supply problems. I just found a place in Bailey, Colorado that I ordered some from that has plenty in stock.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
Oh,
The
yeah,
packets or the pace?
on the packets, and I'm not sure about the paste, but
Okay.
I'm looking on my emails here. I can throw that out here when I find it if you guys want.
that'd be great, Mike. You could drop that into the chat.
I
That'd be
will do
wonderful.
that.
There was another question. I can't
Yeah.
see the chat for
If
some
the
reason.
trees are cut down but not covered or chipped, is it helpful?
That depends. So if you have a tree that was infected the year prior that's dead, and that classification is changing very quickly, by the way, of dead or alive in terms of if it's actively infected or not, because the actively infected trees are now dying rapidly. But if it was last season's kill, meaning the beetles have already flown from that tree, then you can treat that wood like firewood. You can leave it on the ground. It's perfectly fine. If it's actively infected, then you do not want to just cut it down and leave it there. The beetles can still thrive and finish their molting process. They don't have much longer to go to where they will still be airborne. You do covering is an option. You want to use a opaque to clear plastic tarping. So that's your solar kill method, and that is going to create a lot of heat and essentially kill the larva inside. And I would give that at least, 4 to 5 months of being covered, and then you can treat it like firewood or whatever you would want to do. Um, Covering wood is definitely an option. It is depends on how much wood you have for it to be a process that it makes sense or not, really. If you have 20 trees, covering them is it's labor intensive. Not really something I recommend. So disposing of them would be your best option at that point in time. And there are facilities like Enviroworks and Conifer, they take beetle, they grind it, they kill it. Um, And that is another issue that I'm trying to kind of navigate with the county as well of, the between the slash yards and everything else, there really isn't many places to take infected wood at this point. The county slash yard, I believe, is 8-inch diameter, 6 to 8 inch, depends. And that's not going to cover a lot of trees. So, where do you put it at that point in time? Do you leave it on your property covered? Do you, we obviously can't burn it right now. So there is an empty gap there that I think is not being addressed that definitely needs to be. But the guys in Enviroworks are great. It's a great resource for the community to have. So, yeah. Anything else?
I have the name of that place I got my last batch of verbenone packs from.
Uh-huh.
It's called the it's called Fire Adapted Bailey,
Okay.
and the email I have is fireadaptedbailey at gmail.com.
Nice.
Okay.
I can see
Yeah,
a
they
chat.
have a bulk order. We ordered a bunch through there to make it cheaper.
Yep. The more you order, usually the cheaper it is. I think the cheapest I've seen is about $8 a packet, something like that, but you have to order a lot to get that pricing. Um,
Carson, did you have another question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, similar to what you were already talking about after a tree's been killed, is it typically only one season that the larva will produce new beetles that would fly out of a particular tree?
yes, so the beetles lay their larvae inside, or their eggs, or is it eggs? I'm not sure. But they turn into larvae, and that lasts one season. So once that tree is done, there isn't anything for the beetle from a nutrient standpoint for them to get from it anymore, for them to create a life cycle. So a beetle's not going to fly into a dead tree because the nutrients aren't there for it to survive. So once the tree is completely dead, if it has no needles on it whatsoever, and it has pitch tubes, that is definitely going to be a last year's kill, not this year.
And if
Well, the last
sorry,
season.
I've got some standing trees throughout our property that have definitely been dead for a while and have huge woodpecker holes, like probably nests and stuff. I mean, those aren't a
Uh-huh.
threat anymore then, right?
Um, from a beetle standpoint, no, but dead trees are definitely a fire risk. They go up like Roman candles. So any ember flying through the air, anything like that, high chance that tree is going to and burst very quickly. So, you know, I there is a habitat standpoint of, dead trees are good for nature. It's kind of nature's process. But from a protection standpoint of your property, dead trees are definitely a risk. One from falling, two from fire. So just
That
hazardous
makes
in
sense.
general.
I've been working through like taking down the dead trees, and because so there's a section that the previous owner had horses in, and the horses chewed on the trees, and they seem to be vulnerable because there's a lot of dead trees in that area. And I don't
Yep.
know if that made them more vulnerable to the bugs, or if they're
Well,
just
well, bark damage can affect the tree as well. So if you were to take a tree, yeah, some old firewood guys, for instance, they'd go through their forest and they would cut a ring around their tree. That cuts the vascular system off of the tree. So if it's just the surface layer of bark in a small area, obviously the tree's not going to die. But if it's a large area of bark being removed, that tree's just opened up to everything. It's kind of like a wound on your body with germs and everything else. So it may not have affected the cambium layer or the xylem or anything like that, but it other things can get in there as well. So it could have not been beetle. Also, horses, if the horses were around them, obviously there's going to be a lot of nitrogen, a lot of other things that can negatively impact those trees as well. Should be a good thing, but too much is a bad thing, especially for trees here. They're not used to that much nutrients. So I
and
would
then
look for the pitch tubes.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of this. So the Wild Aware, you're a
Yeah.
nonprofit?
Wildware is a nonprofit, and then we invited the Mountain Pine Beetle Foundation also as a nonprofit to speak today. Yes, that's right.
Okay. And did I hear, Wesley, did you say something about there's a an option to have someone come look at the property
Yep.
for,
Yep. So at the end, I can post it. I can put it in the chat right here too. Give me 1 second.
And that was another question that just came through was, yeah, are there grants or financial assistance for residents to treat their trees?
Um, so yes and no. From a grant perspective, there's not many. From financial assistance, we are working on trying to organize that. We are a fairly new nonprofit, so we have not gone through much of a fundraising process yet. But that is the ultimate goal in order to be able to, one, offer assistance with preventative measures, but also removal as well. Right now, we do have some things that help you financially. I have service providers and other things that it can still work in your favor, and I can still help you. But as of right now, I can't offer any free services, but hopefully that will soon come. So we're working on it.
is so coming to look is also a paid service?
No, it's free.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you follow the link I put in the chat, it's mountainpinebeetle.org, and you go to the property evaluation page with tab, and then you fill out that form, and then one of us will contact you, and we'll set up a time to come take a look at them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We had a good tip from Audrey. She said they've been using the packets for years, for a few years. And as a time saver, the first year we put them up, they put a small nail in the tree with a large binder clip and a washer to hold the clip against the tree. Now they just put the packet in the paper clip each year instead of having to redo the nail each year.
Nice. It's a good call.
Yeah, because it got really, my neighbor thought of it, and it is kind of a pain to have to take out the nail and redo the nail every year. So
Mhm.
if you want to try that, if you guys know what I'm talking about, the black binder clips, then you can just clip the packet to the tree, um, and keep the nail in the washer there all year, and it works really well.
Okay, that's great. Have they been effective for your trees?
Yes, we haven't lost a tree.
Good.
I do
That's
have a
great.
question. You said that if a tree only has 1 to 3 pitch tubes, that it could have a chance of surviving.
It could.
So is there something as a homeowner you
So
then
so
do for
that
that tree?
no, so that would mean that the tree did what it was supposed to do and actually pitched that beetle out.
Hmm.
That it wasn't successful in getting in there. So there's nothing that it needs to be done at that point in time, at least in my opinion. You can do, a systemic injection just to make sure, and that's a definitely a viable option. But I, in my opinion, I would think the tree is okay because it did what it was supposed to do. It defended itself and was successful. Um, that beetle didn't have a chance to release that pheromone to say, "Hey, this is a great tree, come get it," and that's what brings on the onslaught um, of and largely infected trees. They're very obvious. You'll see them from 1 to 2 feet from the ground all the way up into the canopy on the trunk wood, at least, not on the branches. But I've seen them 20 feet up. So it for me, thinking about spraying and going through with a high pressured sprayer 20 feet into a canopy through someone's property sounds like a nightmare. But that's just me. So,
Well, that's why we have you here, so we can understand
yeah.
that better.
How many packets per acre and how you recommend spacing them out? So, it it depends on how many trees you have and how far they're spaced out. So, if you have a group of trees that's 1 to 2 to 5 feet away, say there's 3 trees that are all about 5 feet away. You could probably do 1 to 2 of those and be okay. You don't necessarily have to do all of them, but if their trees are spaced out, more than 10 to 15 feet, I would do them all. Or or at the very least, if you're looking from a financial perspective of trying to save some money, the barrier trees are definitely important. And then kind of working your way in and, kind of staggering as you go through there if money is a problem. Because, I understand that. And, if you have 200 trees, doing all of them really isn't an option. So, um, it's something that the closer they are, the less you need of them. Um, but if it was my property, I would do every tree. So,
Can you talk about your analogy that you were telling me about pulling the weeds?
okay. So, the analogy is, there's herbicides, you have weeds growing in your sidewalk, and you can spray Roundup on them or some other type of herbicide, and the weeds will die. And it's pretty easy and it works. But ultimately, the best thing is just to pull the weeds, and that's going to solve your problem. So I'm not saying cut your trees down that are healthy, but when it comes to the infected trees, identifying them, removing them, that's going to save your property the most. That's why Jefferson County put out that grant to be able to remove only infected trees because that stops the spread the quickest. So, um, then I kind of compared that to spraying pesticide, because to the verbenone ish, because it's a more natural way, and there's natural ways to kill your weeds too with baking soda and vinegar and other things. But it's it we all know the dangers of Roundup and other things like that, and it's the same thing with the pesticides in my opinion. So what was the other one you mentioned? Chemo attractant pheromone is even working on manufacturing traps for pine beetles. They know. I don't know. I know they have traps for them because they've researched them, but on a large scale, I don't believe there is a trapping system. Have you ever heard anything like that, Mike?
Trapping system?
A trapping system.
Yeah, Dr. West, the state entomologist, has active traps where they're trying to see if the beetles are flying early. And I don't think he's got any to speak of. So there is some trapping going on.
I think the question was more as a
Oh,
preventative nature than if there are traps. And I'm sure there's traps, but I don't
oh,
think there's one
to catch them so they don't go in the trees.
right like a mosquito
No such animal that
killer.
I know
I don't
of.
I don't
Sorry.
think so.
Yeah,
It would be cool though. But
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
yeah.
Well,
I have another
any other
question.
questions?
Yeah. Go for
Oh,
it,
Uh,
Carson.
if you've got a place with um, a down tree that is infected and it's directly in the sun, does it still need to be covered in the plastic?
I would recommend it. Especially with the fluctuations of weather here. It's about the heat that goes in there. The sun does have some effect for sure, but it it's you're kind of like creating a small greenhouse around that log, and all of a sudden it becomes 100 degrees in there, and the beetle just can't survive that. So that's where the tarping comes from, and it also kind of traps the beetle in there a little bit if it does decide to fly as a fail safe, I suppose. But I would definitely tarp them if you have down trees that are actively infected, and if you don't want to remove the wood.
Okay.
Can you talk about the timeline again for us one more time about when people are saying they think they're going to be flying and when you need to put the packets or
So
whatever?
there was a lot of concern about beetles flying earlier than they did last year. I've seen documentation that they flew twice last year, because of the warmer weather and the drought. I don't have any scientific evidence to back that, but something that I read. And but late June is when I would start putting up the verbenone if that's the option you're going to take. They say beginning of July, but I would probably lean a little bit on the other side of that. That's where I'm going late or mid June. It has a 3-month protection zone, Um, but that's kind of the minimum. Also depends on the size of packet you get. Larger packets have a little bit more time. And then the paste has a little bit more than the packets, at least from what I've seen.
Looks like we got two more questions in our chat
Yep.
now. So,
So there, you don't inject the verbenone. The verbenone is the question was, are there any negative health effects from burning firewood or using mulch from trees that have been injected with verbenone? How dangerous is it for humans? So the vermin itself it has no known dangers at all for humans whatsoever. Does still have its safety regulations because it's a product used for insect control, but it is a fairly natural product. You don't inject it, so that tree can always be used for firewood with no problems whatsoever. It's placed on the outside of the tree, either from the packet or a splat paste. Um, I don't know if I would necessarily burn a big puck of verbenone paste. I might take that off first, but and the packet, but pretty easy to do. So. And I'm really curious about the epidemic that's going on. Can you talk more about how recent infestations are different than previous years? So the main thing that's different in these few years that are causing this is really the warmer weather and the lack of moisture. So the drought and the heat is causing the trees to have less pitch. And that pitch is what is their natural defense mechanism of this beetle. So without it, with less of it, then they can't defend themselves. It also creates a weaker tree. So that's another point that I haven't talked about yet is, thinning a really dense area of woods is also very important. The forest naturally thins itself, and we kind of prevent that at this point in time with fire prevention, other things. So we're kind of creating an all-you-can-eat buffet by overforested areas and yards and properties and everything else that don't get touched anymore. And they don't get burned. This is a natural cycle, but we're kind of making it worse at the same time. Um, so that's what's making it bad now. If we had had a lot of snow this winter, or if it keeps raining like it has been, then that could be a good sign. But at this point in time, it's already so bad that there's still going to be repercussions for years to come from this, whether or not we get a bunch of rain right now or not, because there's just so many active beetles about to fly that it's very hard to combat that. So there's a guy
right.
next door with a tree company who's been posting videos mine at the longer stage.
Mhm.
Okay, yep.
Mhm. So people might be interested in
Um,
that. Mhm.
yep, and we've seen active larvae that haven't molted yet as well from removing trees and everything else. They're still in there, so that's a good sign. Have you seen if any trees are still green looking okay, except for pitch tube early indications? So if the tree has pitch tubes, it can still be green, 100%. But it is probably more than likely going to die very soon. It depends on the area that you're in. I've seen both sides. I've seen some areas that have gotten either less water, maybe they're a little bit warmer and a little micro ecosystem, whatever it is. Their needles are turning yellow, if not brown already. You can see it clearly if you drive down I-70 and you look, you'll see the brown trees. And now they were still green. Now they were slight yellow. Now they're turning a brownish yellow. And those trees are active. And so those they're just gonna keep going. So there's not gonna be, it's unfortunate, but there's not going to be any trees left through those areas. Um, it, they're just because it doesn't seem like anything's being done at this point in time unless that can be changed. So, um, especially down 285 as well, you see it there. It's those some of those hillsides are covered and they're all going to die, unfortunately. So. What was the second question? With the drought, I've heard some trees aren't producing pitch tubes, so that other indication besides yellowing needles. So there's occasion that the tree won't produce any pitch tubes at all, but you will still see signs. I I do believe that's very rare. Am I correct in that, Mike?
Say again, please.
So a tree not producing any pitch tubes when it's actively infected.
I don't see that, but what you will see is very difficult to identify pitch tubes when a tree starts getting weaker and runs out of resin or is weak to begin with. It'll only push out like real dry pitch tubes or even just sawdust.
Yep, yep. So that's the beetle's excrement is that sawdust. And I've seen the small kind of little pitch tubes as well. But you can still find them 99% of the time. There are other things that kill trees as well. It's not just beetles, but typically right now it's going to be beetles. So is a tree able to survive an attack by pitching out the beetle? Yes, it is. And that's where I was saying with that 1 to 3 pitch tube area, depending on the size of the tree, it does have a chance of survival at that point. You know, if you see one, it doesn't mean you need to cut your tree down right away. You need to watch it, make sure it's okay, look at it the next few months, and then, it'll show its signs as you go.
The next one, will the webinar be available to share with homeowners? That's our plan if all the technicalities work correctly. So yes. And then Wesley, yeah, we'll make sure giving your contact info to everybody. And then Stephanie wants to know, can you repeat which types of trees are susceptible?
So the mountain pine beetle in general, you're gonna have ponderosa, lodgepole. I've also seen bristlecone pines kind of further out. And but there's other beetles as well. There's fir beetles, there's spruce beetles, there's all sorts of beetles. So right now, the mountain pine beetle is the main focus of the concern, but there's a lot of other beetles that are doing just as much damage. Well, not just as much, but doing damage on their own accord. It Oh, I didn't mean to hit enter. I meant to hit a space there. And But from the mountain pine beetle perspective, it is going to be a pine tree. So
Yeah. Well, and this seems like a good time to share this last thing that I had here. This has both of our websites. So wildaware.org, this is for Wild Aware. Like I said, we are a nonprofit up here in the foothills and our mission is to help with people and wildlife respectful coexistence. And so we strive to be an educational resource for homeowners for lots of different things. So check out our website for that. And then for the mountainpinebeetle.org. That's the foundation's website there that also has more information. And then Wesley put together a really nice document that we're going to be emailing to all of our participants today that kind of talks about all of the things that he mentioned and a really nice little graphic about the different options for homeowners and how they kind of affect things. And so you'll be getting that resource as well. So yeah. Um, I guess we have one more. I was asked for any final questions. I guess we have one more here.
So we are actively looking for volunteers, mostly for tree identification, walking properties, and I've actually really enjoyed the process. I've got to see some really cool places and walk in nature all day. So it's been fun. So we're looking for volunteers from that realm. Eventually, maybe applying splat verbenone as well. Haven't quite gotten there yet. And then, getting information out there, sharing it with your neighbors from a citizen standpoint, that's important. Looking at your neighbor's property, they might not know, might say, hey, you got some beetles over there. Again, once you start to identify them there, I can now walk through the woods and one that's 50 yards away, I can see it from there. So once you get used to it and know what you're looking for, they're fairly easy to find. Some of them tricky though. Some of them are, like an old branch that broke off that looks kind of like a pitch tube or something along those lines that need a closer look, or the bark looks funny and you actually have to walk over to it. But you could also look. So I use an app called Landglide, and Landglide is a GIS mapping software, and I use it for property lines when I'm inspecting properties. And it shows me that I'm on that property because I don't want to go with someone else's. And their maps update very, very quickly. So, Google Maps, you can't see much dead canopy, but with Landglide, I've actually been able to open that up and pinpoint, at least the start of the dead trees if I'm just looking for them. It does help. It's a great app overall, though. I use it all the time. So
I think
it really
also a
is.
way you can help our organizations and these goals is if you do have the financial means, like donating to Mountain Pine Beetle org, that helping them go out and to help those that don't have the financial means to do this, or for Wild Awares, we can provide more free things like this to help our community.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For sure. And you asked about the bifenthrin, and it, to me personally, all the pesticides I've kind of lumped them all in the same kind of category. There are less toxic things. They're probably not as effective to begin with, but they're still going to be, if they're toxic to the beetle, then they're going to be toxic to everything else. And there isn't anything from a pesticide standpoint that just targets the beetle. So that's my concern with it. It, it, yeah, it, anything it touches or lands on, then another insect touches it, it's going to spread through it. May not kill it, but it's still going to be in the system and it's going to spread through the food chain, and there's going to be issues that compound. So, um, yeah,
Could I jump in? I just have a thought when you're talking about neighbors. So my neighborhood, the yards are not huge. And so
mhm,
even though I used the pheromone last year, my neighbor sprayed. And what happened was I have a bat house and it was being occupied by big brown and small brown bats coexisting. And last year they came as usual in April, but in July they left and I haven't seen them since. So I don't know. I noticed that there were almost no moths. If I had the windows and doors open at night, it also got very hot, of course. So I'm not really sure what drove them out. But just thinking about when you're spraying and you get that drift and how it affected my own potential ecosystem here at the house.
yep, that's great to share. And that's why the injection to me is, if you're going to go that route, it is definitely the best route because it is pinpointed into that tree. There's no overspray. It's impossible to spray a tree properly and not have a massive amount of overspray. Um, it just isn't possible with the technology we have. I mean, it's a liquid coming out of a hose. When you wash your car, you're going to get the area around it wet, not even trying to. So same thing. Um, and yeah, but it's a great example of how it could affect, and it could be the heat, but it could have definitely been the spray, and they had less bugs to eat. Um, that's what they feed on. So yeah, definitely could be a situation there. So I uploaded my contact information. Feel free to email me, text me, anything else, but you can also go on the website and fill out that form. It goes into my database, and then we'll reach out to you. And we have a little bit of time before, um, there's really well, small, brief period of time before the beetles start flying. And then it compounds even more. So the more we can get done now, the better. Um, but at least a month. So,
Can you put up that contact stuff again? I'm not seeing it.
I can. Well, I mean well, I just have this one, but then he put his stuff there too. So this is directly to his website and
yeah, and
ours.
I put it up, I put it in the group or the chat. Did you see it there, Mike?
It seemed to have disappeared. Maybe I need to scroll. I think it was Wesley at mountainpinebeetle.org, right?
Yes, sir.
And what's your cell or
Seven
whatever
two
number
zero
that was?
734 1697.
I'm sorry. One more time, please.
720
Yeah.
734 1697.
Thank you.
Of course.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, any other questions? Seems like we're kind of wrapping it up today. So wonderful. Well, we really appreciate all of you coming here today. Um, can see that it's important kind of concern and for our community right now. We really appreciate Wesley for giving his time today. He even had a power outage at his house and drove down the mountain really quick so he could be able to jump on here with us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we really appreciate you, Wesley. So
Cool.
yeah, so check out more of his website and our website and let us know how we can be more of service to you guys for our community. And thank you. Anything else you wanted to add, Wesley
Nope, I really
or
appreciate
Christy?
everybody coming and for Wildware putting this on. And, you know, we just want to help the community as much as we can. And you know, there's a lot of ways to do it, but with my background of major disasters and it's kind of what it's turning into, I do feel like I can definitely put a dent into it at least. So, and with the help of the other tree companies in town and everything else, is you know everybody gets on the same page and you know give good honest work. And I know Mike does that, and he's always done it. So. Yeah, you know, if you have a trusted tree guy, call him. You know, just make sure he has insurance and all of those good things. But you know, I'm happy to come take a look at your property, no matter where it is, and you know, make sure that your trees are okay.
Thanks, Wesley.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of
And
course, Mike.
give us a couple of days, but we'll send out his that document that I talked about to everyone that was registered here. If for some reason you don't get it, reach out to info@wildaware.org and we'll make sure that you do get it. So
And feel free to share that with anybody as well.
great.
You know, if you have family or friends or whatever, that the more people know about this, the more information we get out there, the better. The whole goal is to get the problem taken care of. So however that happens, I'm happy with it.
Perfect. Yeah,
All right,
great.
cool.
All right. Well, thank
Thank
you
you so
everyone so
much.
much. Have a lovely
Yep,
evening. All
yep.
right.
Thank you. Of
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Wesley.
course.